ironically, I was looking for the Lego Queen Mary, which I think is exactly what you were looking for, Brad.
Yes. I was.
Whoa.
Yeah, because so when I met Shiloh, the reason why I first spoke to him was because I was looking for the Lego Queen Mary and I couldn't find it. It was weird because I remember you telling me, Brad, when I met you on May 5th, that you were walking around looking for the Lego Queen Mary.
That's ironic. And
hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Queen's Cross podcast. I am your host, Alex.
And I'm your co-host, Shiloh.
And we are joined today by Brad from the UK.
Hi there. I can't believe I'm on an Alex the Historian podcast. It's just unreal. I never thought this would ever happen, but it has.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit more about who Brad is and why he's on here. But first, our schedule for today, we're going to talk about the news going around on the Queen Mary, as well as we will be getting into the main topic about Brad, how we met him, his first time on the Queen Mary, and all the things that he thinks about it. And then we'll be going into our Q&A. We've got 3 questions today that we have to answer. And then finally, we end with our trivia game. So, all right. So in Queen Mary news, one of the first things that we have today is a photograph of the forward bow area of the Queen Mary. They are removing these temporary lights that they had put up because around the holidays, they were doing these various parties and things just outside of the observation bar. And they needed kind of night lighting, something that would kind of glow different colors and stuff at night. And so I think we had covered on a previous repair update that they had added these lights around December. And so now they're being taken down. And so I'm actually kind of glad about that because I was hoping at the time that they would be temporary, and it seems that they are. So we have that. But then the other bit of news, which again doesn't seem such big news, but it is pretty big. So if you remember on the last podcast, we talked about how they were removing stairs on the sun deck. They had cut out this old old set of stairs that had been there since the early 1970s, and they have replaced it with a wheelchair lift. And this is kind of exciting news for a few reasons. One, mainly that up until now, Sun Deck was completely inaccessible to guests in wheelchairs. So if you wanted to walk around on the exterior promenade up above, or, I guess in this case, roll around, you couldn't. But now there is a way. So you can take the port side original lifts and take them all the way up to Sun Deck, and then you would cross through the interiors and then be able to come out through this little porch, and then on that porch is the little wheelchair lift that will drop you down onto the Sun Deck promenade. And so that's kind of a new feature that the ship has never had before. When it will be available for use, I couldn't really tell you, but part of the reason why it's exciting is because it also makes me think that, you see, the interiors of Sun Deck, which are several feet higher than the exterior, used to have all kinds of exhibits and things inside. And so if you have to cross through those areas just to get to this wheelchair lift, maybe that means some of the exhibits are coming back on Sun Deck. So that's kind of one of the interesting things that I think I wanted to mention on this podcast.
And I did mention to you earlier, too, that they do have a skeleton of a gift shop up there. So if they did open a new sort of exhibit, they could probably attach that to it. Or they could open up an entirely new shop on board the ship. Who knows? But all that stuff is still up there. They have an entire, it's almost like a visitor's desk that they have in the center. They have all kinds of stuff that they could easily create something, fashion something with. It's all just sitting up there. So we'll have to see what they decide to do.
Yep. So that's exciting news for today, but that's it for news. In fact, I really tried scouring, the internet and seeing what there was. But that's about it for now. But we'll get into our main topic, which is Brad. So, Brad, this was your first time on the Queen Mary, wasn't it? Your first time in the US, even.
Yes, it was. So I first learnt about the Queen Mary. It was actually in a book at school, and I would have been 11, 12. So it was about 15 years ago. Now you know how old I am. And in the UK, obviously rain's not much of a thing in California, but basically wet break, or is it recess you call it in the US, you can't go out onto the playground and play with your friends, so you're either like doing indoorsy stuff. So I was in the school library, I picked up this book about ships and just flicking through it, and there was like 4 whole pages on the Queen Mary, just like the exterior of the ship. And then what really caught my attention was the first class lounge with the fantastic clock, and that's got the 2 ships, the Mary and the Elizabeth, the 2 models that move, and the map of the Atlantic. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wow. And I mean, I'm a car geek anyway, but it just sort of drew me to ships and steam-powered vehicles. I just found it fascinating. So it's like, wow, at some point I've got to go. And I think what started as well was, do you remember, like say a few years ago, there was all the scare stories, if you like, about the Queen Mary. It's getting into such a bad state. And then lockdown happened, and then obviously the ship closed, and then the sort of doom stories about what might happen to the Queen Mary became more and more pronounced. And it's like, oh my, what's going to happen to the ship? And I was worried sick about the ship, because I thought it was a fantastic thing. And because, like I say, you do a lot of digging on the internet, you'll find there's not another 1930s liner in existence. It's the only one. And so, like I say, I was really worried. And then I stumbled across Alex. I think it would have been about November of 2021, if I'm being precise. I've got that figure in my head. It's around that time frame. And then watching Alex's videos, it kind of put my mind to rest a bit that actually they do care about the Queen Mary, and it can again be reopened, be repaired, and hopefully draw a lot of people in. As we now know, when I was there, the ship was packed, and then
it was
absolutely packed. Even for a weekday, it was packed. It was just an exciting time to be on a live. Normally, I'm not a fan of crowds, but I was glad to be in that crowd, if you know what I mean. I really was.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask. So when you came and decided you were like, I'm going to go see the Queen Mary, when you were coming up to the ship, did you see it out of, a car window or something? What did you think when you first saw the exterior of the ship?
I saw the ship obviously on the bridge. I don't know what I forget what the bridge is called, but you know what I mean. The bridge that takes you up to the port and that. I just thought, wow. I knew the thing was that I knew it was a big ship, and I'd seen hundreds, if not thousands, of Queen Mary pictures, and it's sort of like, well, after all these years of wanting to do it, I'm finally driving up to the Queen Mary. Well, I'm in an Uber, but I'm going up to the Queen Mary. It's like, it's happening. Am I dreaming? Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like...
Was it like, for me, when my first time really well, I can't remember my first time driving up to the Queen Mary because it's been a couple of times, but the first time I really cared about driving up to the Queen Mary, the first time I really fell in love with the ship, I remember driving over that bridge and looking over at the ship and being like, oh my gosh, this is like one of those classic ocean liners that you see in, you know, in various historic movies and stuff, especially like when you watch Titanic, you see the Titanic and it's like this grand reveal and it looks like a ship from a different age, and the Queen Mary looks like a ship from a different age. Did you kind of feel a little bit of that as you were driving up?
Yes. The thing is, though, yes, we have old historic ships in the UK, but there's nothing I can really compare it to, honestly. If I'm being honest, probably the closest ships I can think of that maybe come to mind are the Nomadic, the Belfast Titanic Quarter, and the paddle steamer, the Waverley, that sails up and down the coast of the UK. They're the only ships I can really think of that are anything close to the Queen Mary, even though they're not, well, maybe Nomadic, because it tendered Queen Mary, Cherbourg, so, and Waverley, again, came from Scotland, so they're about the only ships I could really compare Queen Mary to.
And when you stepped aboard, because I don't remember what your first day on the ship, I don't remember when that was. What day was that? Your first day on the ship?
It was the 5th of May. Do you remember the Cinco de Mayo?
Oh, so the day I met you was your first day on the ship.
Yes, it was. That was my first day, and I just remember it well. And it's like I step aboard. You go up the, you go to the, what do you call it? The desk at the dock. Do you know what I mean?
The pursers, or you mean the desk outside?
Yes, the desk outside.
Oh, right.
And you're like, I just show them on my phone. Yeah, I've got a hotel reservation. I stayed 2 nights on the Queen Mary, and then they're like, yeah, just go up in the elevator, press number 4, and that's where the hotel check-in is. And then you go up in the elevator, the lift, you walk along the gangway, if you call it that, and I go inside, and I just think, wow, I've been aboard museum ships, but you just know there's nothing we have in the UK that comes close. I mean, if you look at the Waverley, the Queen Mary makes Waverley look like, you know, one of those toys you'd put in a kid's bath. It does.
Yeah. Queen Mary is a huge, you know, that's the funny thing is there's a lot of people who are like, oh, when you see the big cruise ship behind Queen Mary, it makes Queen Mary look so small. It's like, but she's still one of the largest ships in the world to this day. She is still considered a extremely massive ship. I think people don't quite realize that.
Yeah, she's in the top 10 list still.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it's funny you should mention that. I posted a picture of the Queen Mary on my Facebook the other day. It was on the 89th anniversary of the voyage, and someone I know commented and said, "Oh, that'd be great for short distance cruises." And instead of explaining them the reasons why the ship couldn't sail, I literally just sent them Alex's video. I'm like, just watch this and try and take it in. Don't just jump to conclusions. Watch the whole video with a decent mindset, and then you'll realise it's a massive vessel, and the costs of running it would just be extortionate. You think about why they took it out of service in '67. It wasn't just jet travel. The cost of the oil and the fuel oil was skyrocketing in the 60s.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, it wasn't even just that. Like, all the issues that they had with running the Queen Mary in the late 60s would be exponentially larger today. So if
Oh,
it
yeah.
was impossible back then for them to do it, it would be much more impossible for them today to do it.
Yeah,
So
and even doing something like cruising to Catalina, that'd be close to impossible.
yeah.
No.
But
Um,
but I did have a question for you, Brad. When you stepped on the ship, what was your first impressions? What did you think when you came on the Queen Mary and looked around for the first time?
what do you say? Really, it's like, am I in a dream or something? It's like I'd looked at thousands of photos of the Queen Mary and watched obviously loads of videos on it. The funny thing is though, before Alex, there was virtually no videos on the Queen Mary. Now there's literally loads.
Oh yeah.
But like I say, I'd you know, when you've never been somewhere, but at the same time you feel you've been there before.
Yep.
I know where a lot of things were, but it was still nice when I met Alex to have like a personal tour guide. Because the tours are very good, but with any tour, you're in a group of people, and there's like half the people that really taking it in,
Yeah.
and then there's like another half of the group that are like not too bothered.
Yeah.
And you feel, you know what I mean, you can't really take everything in. But with Alex, just explaining a lot about what was done with the ship, about where certain rooms are, about what differs from the ship now as opposed to when it's a liner. Alex knew absolutely everything, so I was just grateful for Alex to show me round.
You know, it's weird because I met you.
I think it was around midday, actually.
Oh, really?
The
Okay.
thing was, though, at that point, I think I checked into the hotel, I dumped my bag in my room, then it's like, well, I'm here now, I may as well have a look round. And yeah, it's like your videos and that were on my mind. And then I met you in the shopping promenade area.
The main
And
hall.
then I walked past you, and then it's like my brain's like, is that Alex? It can't be. And it's like I just like walked past, and I walked past again, and I'm like just, and then like, you Alex the historian, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just funny because I must have come back to that table because I was sitting at a table in the main hall, and I came back to that table several times that day because I had breakfast at that table, then I walked around, then eventually I came back and sat down. I was by myself that day, so I didn't really have anything else to do. I was just kind of absorbing the atmosphere of the ship. And then there he was asking, he's like, "Are you Alex the historian?" And he told me that he watches my videos and stuff. I was like, "Oh, that's really cool," and so I was just like, "Well, I'm not really doing anything today, do you want to walk around the ship with me, and I'll kind of talk to you about it. We can just have a conversation." So he was like, "Yeah." I honestly was afraid that I was interrupting your visit.
No. It was honestly, to have someone very knowledgeable and like a personal tour guide was absolutely amazing. But yeah, just to have someone to show you rather than you're in a group of, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 people, and you've got half the group that are really taking it in, and like the other half that just like wandering around, roaming, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. But to have someone to take the time to properly explain a bit about the ship. I mean, I knew a lot about the history of the ship anyway, but to have someone that could take you through it a bit more in depth than even like so Wikipedia and
Right.
some snippets on YouTube and that will actually tell you about the ship is amazing.
That's how I feel about Shiloh, actually. When I meet him on the Queen Mary, because Shiloh, he can basically walk around the ship and be like, "Oh, you want to see this?" And and then he'll show me something. I'm like, I would have never known that was there if Shiloh wasn't here. So that's why, now whenever I go to the ship, I'm like, I want to have Shiloh there. So
I was to mention too, it's kind of funny, is that the first time I met you too, pretty much formally, was in the main hall as well.
It was, yes. I
Yeah.
met Shiloh for the first time in the main hall. He was in my camera shot. I was taking a panorama of the main hall, and he walked right on into the shot, and I was like, he doesn't look like he works here, but he's dressed as one of the officers on the ship. So
Yeah.
ironically, I was looking for the Lego Queen Mary, which I think is exactly what you were looking for, Brad.
Yes, I was.
Whoa.
Yeah, because so when I met Shiloh, the reason why I first spoke to him was because I was looking for the Lego Queen Mary and I couldn't find it. So when I was with my friend Chris and my friend Steve and we were sitting down and having breakfast, Shiloh and his mom were seated right next to us in the middle of this empty restaurant.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking, I'm like, well, he's in this, officer's uniform. If there's anybody on the ship that knows where the Lego Queen Mary is, it's him. And so I asked him for directions. But it was weird because I remember you telling me, Brad, when I met you on May 5th, that you were walking around looking for the Lego Queen Mary.
And that's ironic. And, and the ironic thing as well is what Shiloh told me. There's a Lego cat on the ship, and Shiloh told me, every day they move it to a different location on the ship. I'm like, wow. The Lego ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really neat. In fact, I'll put up a picture on the screen of Brad and the Lego Queen Mary. He wanted me in the picture, but I looked so dumpy that day. I was like, I don't want to be in the picture, but but we were there, and yeah, it's such a cool Lego model. It's the largest model of a Lego ship. While you were exploring the ship for the next couple of days, was there any aspect about the ship, any design or operation or functionality, or even just an atmospheric kind of thing about the ship that you found unexpected or surprising?
To be honest, the Queen Mary is very much as I expected. I saw most of the ship I wanted to know, and it's very difficult to answer that. But obviously, in time, I do want to see more of the ship brought back and restored. I really do think they should, in the next few years at least, do something with the pool, and maybe even, I think, you could disagree with me on this if you want, but like you say, the ship really does need a pool for the visitors, even though I'm not much of a swimmer myself. I do think it would be beneficial for the ship. So do you build a pool on the dock, on the ground level, like an outdoor pool for the hotel guests, and have the first class pool, restore it to display standard, or do you somehow try and reinstate second class pool? Because I know that got completely wiped out during the conversion. Or do you just be like, hey, we will just we'll spend the money, we'll restore the first class pool to operational potential? Where do you stand on that? And again, to go into the promenade and the bridge and that, it was just really nice. And even you go into the engine room and you can smell the oil and the grease and that. It's like, obviously, I don't know what it's like for old steam locomotives where you guys are, but in the UK, there's a big thing about old steam locomotives, and it literally smells like an old steam locomotive in that. I assume it's just the oil and the and the grease and that, but yeah, it's got that fantastic smell. And you go into promenade, and again, it's got that. It definitely has the smell, the lovely scent of a museum ship. If you could just bottle it up, it's like it's like these old cars, and they've got that that smell to them. You can't recreate it. It's just aged like a fine wine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Queen Mary does have that scent. Actually, it's funny because the scent on the ship has changed slightly since my last visit in 2020. Because in 2020, the ship was actually beginning to smell a bit musty, and that was from all the dirty carpets and things that the ship had. The ship was towards the start of the pandemic, it wasn't being taken care of very well. And so she was beginning to stink a little bit. But when I came back in February and then again in May, she smelled so clean and fresh. You could smell the lemon polish on the wood paneling, but also just you could smell the wood paneling itself, the actual wood grain, it smells like a library.
Yeah.
As well as the fact that the ship just has a certain like aged smell to it. But it's not like not stinky. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Like Brad was saying, a museum ship.
Yes. The engine room smells like a steam locomotive.
Yeah.
The promenade smells like a museum ship.
Mm-hmm.
It just does. There's no other way of putting it.
So, what was your cabin like? Tell us a bit about your cabin and what you liked about it, or anything that you didn't like, or anything like that.
Okay. So I had a starboard side cabin. Starboard side. I had to think then. And it was a standard double. If you go on the booking, it's called Harbour. I should have put the name in, shouldn't I? But yeah, it was on B deck. It literally I'm not joking. It's not far away from B340.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
No, I literally stayed a few cabins away from B340. But
you told me it was the two beds with the circular mirror in the center, right?
Yes, it's got a double bed.
Yeah.
It's got a double bed, the mirror in the center, and you had two portholes, and TV, bathroom, pretty much everything you could want.
Yeah.
And at night, I honestly, I like back to the smell. I like the smell of the ocean. It's just really, really nice. I slept with both portholes open, and I didn't.
I do that too.
When I checked in, the hotel staff said something like, bear in mind it's an old ship, it can be unpredictable and stuff like that. I mean, yes, I believe it does have air conditioning, but I never, even in hot Southern California, I didn't need to switch it on. I just had the portholes open, I had the lovely smell of the ocean, and I felt fine. I wasn't hot in bed, I wasn't too cold. It was just right, and it was very comfortable. But
you were there during cold weather. It wasn't hot.
Yeah, it wasn't. But I've stayed there in the dead of summer, and the AC was of little help because, like you said, if you had the portholes open, it was pretty cool to begin with. So, yeah.
Honestly,
I wonder what the ship is like in summer, because I mean, some of those cabins, like the cabin that I had, didn't have any air conditioning, so.
I can't. Well, because the one I had when I stayed there in August, I think it was the 4th of August, in a few years back. They had, I can't remember the punka louvers if they worked or not, but there was a AC system that they had put in. It was on the ceiling. It was above one of the beds, and we did use that very briefly. But like I said, we usually had the portholes open, so it didn't matter much to begin with. But I'm sure some of the B deck, because my cabin was on A deck, but I'm sure some of the B deck ones might have be a little stuffy.
Yeah. Brad, was your cabin haunted since it was on B deck?
Well, considering it was close to B340 too.
Yeah.
Well, nothing out the ordinary happened. So sorry to disappoint the paranormal nerds, but nothing out the ordinary happened. Sorry, but it was
just the usual taps on the shoulder. Then,
yeah. The usual the sink turning on. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah, it was just a very nice cabin to have, and yeah, especially with the portholes and that, and it was a very clean room. The only recommendation, like you say, that would have been nice would have been like a desktop fan. I know they had one of the original fans from when the ship sailed, but it would be nice to maybe have like a modern fan, desktop fan on like a little bedside table or something.
Yeah.
Just, but there was nothing to complain about really. The bathroom. I mean, yes, it was a small bath, but then again, things just were smaller back then. So, but you still, like I say, it's still a very nice bathroom. Oh, the only thing I did find a bit annoying was, you know, in the bathrooms you got like hot and cold salt water and hot and salt. The knobs seem to be missing.
Oh,
Yeah.
I got a horrible feeling someone had just like got a screwdriver and was like, "Oh, I'll have these for souvenirs." Why?
That's
What's the logic?
Yeah.
Most of the-
unfortunately, that's been what's been happening for decades, is that people
Yeah.
steal those.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well, I
honest-
think the most common thing that people would take and still do if they can, I can't think of the official name right now, but the screw locks for the portholes that you screwed and tightened down the porthole window down.
Yes.
Those are, most of them are missing
The
because
wing nuts.
wing nuts.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Luckily, on mine, most I think they were all there. But yeah, Alex touched upon this. Like people were stealing the nuts, like you say.
Yep.
What? Why?
Yeah.
What?
You know,
why? It's history.
I call those people the Queen's pickpockets, because
Yes.
they often, a lot of times too, is that there's people who present themselves as people who are support the restoration of the ship, support the ship itself, and are big fans. But then they go around, and when no one's looking, they pull things right off the ship and keep them. You know, so. Those are the people I call the Queen's pickpockets, because that's what they just do. They just go around taking things right off the ship, anything they can, and it doesn't even have to make sense. They just take it because it's a piece of the ship, and they can have it with but they literally think like, well, no one's gonna miss this piece of linoleum, so I'm just gonna rip that off the floor and take it with me.
Right.
You know, so you know, it's been one of those things that I've discouraged very much on this channel. I always talk about that kind of thing.
And some people are like proud of the things that they've stolen.
Yes, some people have. Some people have emailed me or sent me messages online, comments, proudly talking about the things that they've taken on the ship, and I'm like, why? And always they say, well, no one's gonna miss it, and so it's just like,
well, until they do.
Right, yeah.
But even if they don't, it's just the sheer principle. It's just you shouldn't. It doesn't belong in your house. It belongs where it's meant to be on the
Queen
ship.
Mary.
You're right. Exactly right.
Yeah, it's like, and I've been wanting to, without trying to interrupt you guys at all. It's like you say. The thing is though, they think, oh, I've got a bit of the Queen Mary. Just buy like a poster or something.
Yeah.
Buy like a reproduction printer of the Queen Mary or the Queen Elizabeth or something.
I mean, you can just go on eBay. They have artifacts of the ship there. If you want something that was actually on the ship, just go to eBay. They got it all there.
Yeah, don't be helping yourself to bits of the ship. That's what, a 90-year-old item. Even like a nut or something. Someone's like, oh, they'll not miss this. Just no need for it.
So I ask this to a lot of people who visit the Queen Mary for the first time, but I'm going to ask you now. So even though, we took a tour of the ship and you got to see a lot of the ship on the tour, if you hadn't taken that tour, how do you feel about your satisfaction? Again, not counting what you saw on the tour. How do you feel about your satisfaction with being able to fully see and appreciate the ship?
Obviously only on the tour was I able to see the well, actually it was only on the Ghost tour that I managed to see into the pool area. and it was only on the tour I did with you that I managed to see the image from the book all those years ago. You know, of the map of the Atlantic with the clock on it, and the two model ships, the Mary and the Elizabeth, that move. It was only on there, and that's like, it almost felt like I was like 11, 12 year old again, just seeing how I learnt about the Queen Mary. I just couldn't put it into words. But yeah, I think if it weren't for the tour, I wouldn't maybe not been able to see quite as much of the ship I'd have liked to have seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question to ask, because a lot of people are, how do I put it? They're not happy with the amount that you can see just on your own walking about the ship. They feel that there's a lot that's locked behind doors that you can only go to through tours.
Yeah. Hopefully that, they open up more of the ship. Even we always say this, but even just on promenade deck,
Right.
But
most of the stuff is on there anyways. Most of the big attraction items, like the main lounge, a lot of people gravitate towards that.
Again, it's a question of preservation. I suppose it goes again back to, like you say, people stealing stuff, but also you've got to remember the ship is fast approaching its centenary, and as the ship gets older, obviously they're now the right people are taking care of the ship, the right people are doing the jobs on the ship, and so hopefully we'll see more and more reopen. But you do get that impression that maybe it's a little bit disappointing this area is not open yet.
Did you come to the ship with kind of like well, we know that at least you wanted to see that map of the North Atlantic, but did you have anything else on your must-do list for the Queen Mary?
To be honest, I've pretty much covered most of it. Oh, while you're on that subject, Alex, there's one thing as well. The only thing I was a little bit disappointed about was I couldn't get from the dock. I couldn't see the stern of the ship that says Queen Mary. I was a little bit gutted that I couldn't get like a picture from the picture from the outside of the stern of the ship. Obviously, you can walk to the stern from promenade, but you can't see it from when you're off the ship. Yep.
And that would be an added benefit if they had a walk around over the wave break.
Yeah, it's like you say. Feel free to disagree with me with this, but I do think it's about time they towed the sub out and then maybe had like a temporary walkway. You could do like a full 360 of the ship. I think that would be beneficial, because I'd like to have seen the bow, and it'd be nice to see the ship from the starboard side as well.
I think
from dock level.
Yeah, standing at the dock and looking at the ship, I mean, sure, you can get a sense of the size of the ship and how large she is, but I think you won't be truly able to get the true sense of scale of the ship unless you're standing on that breakwater looking up with no obstructions, no dock, no elevator towers, just the ship. Standing and looking at one end to another. That's the only way I think you'll truly be able to get the true scale and size.
It's weird, because you know how I joked early on in the podcast about what ships sort of similar in the UK to the Queen Mary, and I mentioned the paddle steamer, the Waverley, and I joked that the Queen Mary made the Waverley look like a bath toy you would give to a kid to play with at bath time. It's only really, I'd say, the submarine that really gives off the true scale of the Queen Mary, because you go onto the bow of the ship and you look down at the submarine, and it makes the submarine just looks like a little toy down there. It really does.
And that's a military vessel too.
It's a huge submarine. In terms of submarines, it's big, but compared to the Queen Mary, it looks like a bath toy. It's so tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And while we're on the subject of the sub, I don't want to be rude about it, but it just, to me, it just doesn't fit there.
Yeah.
Maybe, to be honest, the what's the paddle tug in San Francisco called? The Appleton Hall. That's it. Yes, Appleton Hall. The funny thing is, though, because I was wanting to go to San Francisco, I did a bit of research on that. Although I was not quite as hooked on that as I was Queen Mary, that would be a really cool exhibit to have alongside the Queen Mary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's about 20 years older than the Queen Mary, but it would fit in a lot better than the submarine would.
So, Brad, what was your favorite part about your visit to the Queen Mary?
Where do we start? The engine room exhibit was very good and very interesting. If a little eerie, but very good. Obviously, meeting you, meeting Shiloh, and meeting Chris was an added bonus. It really was. One of my favourite moments, the one moment that will live with me forever is, and it's on your Cinco de Mayo live stream, was when me and you, Alex, are waiting for the horn to blast. And then we got to 6 o'clock and we were both a bit disappointed it hadn't blasted yet. So we're like, it got to 6:03 and then it's like, I don't think it's going to blow. Alex had kept recording and there was the party, the Cinco de Mayo celebrations, and then 6:05, maybe even 6:07, the horn blast.
That was so late.
I hate when they do that.
Yeah.
And literally the whole party, everyone just jumps. It's like, I was like, I don't know. It's just like everyone just. It was so funny.
Yeah.
It's just like everyone. It crept on everyone, and I couldn't believe it. It was just. I know it's kind of cruel to laugh at, but it was just funny. You couldn't help but laugh.
And it's loud, isn't it? It's pretty loud.
It's loud. I'll tell you one thing though. It's, although you say that, it's not actually as loud as you think it is, but it's still loud, even if you prepare for it.
Yeah,
it blows your ears off.
Mm-hmm.
You should have heard it
really does. The only
you stand up on the bridge, you'll go deaf.
Yeah, next time you go to the ship, you got to hear it.
Rest in peace to those on the bridge.
I've done it multiple times.
The cool thing to do though, but I suppose again it would be money. Maybe if the whistles were blasted by steam, then compressed air. Because you watch the old British Pathé videos, and the horn sounds very different as to how it sounds today. Because obviously they're restored. And as we know,
for that to happen, they'd have to have a boiler building up a pressure of 140 psi, and then they'd have to have a very solid maintenance schedule for taking care of the boiler and taking care of the whistles, because the steam will, it very slowly over time corrodes at the whistles. So they would have to have a very solid maintenance plan for making sure that they didn't corrode or anything.
Maybe could they do it with not quite as much pressure as what it was in her Atlantic days, or would it just be that expensive that it's like,
Well, it would have to be the same pressure because they activate at a certain pressure. So they wouldn't activate if they were at a lower pressure. I know what I was going to ask you. So, as a Brit, how do you feel about a piece of your country's heritage being in Southern California?
I I love that you've asked this. I'm delighted that you guys have it. The thing is, though, I know back in '67 when Queen Mary was being retired, there was a whole group of people that tried to stop the Queen Mary going to the US. Because there really was. But the problem with Queen Mary and the UK now is there's probably only 3 places really the ship, if it stayed in the UK, really could have gone, and they are, I'd say, Belfast, Titanic Quarter, Southampton, and maybe up in Glasgow. They're about the only places. I mean, London, I think she would probably struggle with the mud and that on the Thames. The Thames, I think, would just be far too shallow for her, and then you've got the bends and that. And then I think the same with the Mersey, just the thick mud. Even though you'd think, Liverpool would be a good place for it, the thick mud, I think, would be a problem on the River Mersey. So, and the other thing is, though, I think she survived so well in the California climate. It's like it's like in the UK, people buy like VW buses and certain historic classic cars from the likes of California and other states in that area, Utah and Arizona and that, because you've got a lot of sunshine and not a lot of rain. They tend to be pretty solid, and I think it's the California sun that's helped Queen Mary. If she'd still been in the UK, would she be in as good a condition? I doubt she'd be in this good a condition if she'd been in the UK. She might. If she'd been in the UK, I think, especially money side of things, there's not many people there's a lot of people that've had the enthusiasm, but there's not a lot of people that would be willing to put the money in. And as well, you talk to people now, a lot of people that do know about the Queen Mary fixate on it being haunted, but not a lot of people fixate on history, which bugs me. But also, I'm surprised how many people don't know about the Queen Mary.
Yeah,
that's the thing. A lot of Brits now, I don't know if it's just a generational thing. Lots of people know Titanic, but not many people know about the Queen Mary. Because the hilarious thing, I'll briefly mention SS United States, if that's not a swear word on here. But someone said, why doesn't the UK have the SS United States? And that would be back to the point about if the Queen Mary's still in the UK. And plus with the United States being essentially a strip shell, again, and needing all those hundreds of $1 million spending on it to make it anything like what the Queen Mary is, no one would do it in the UK. And plus, no one in the UK has heard of the United States, SS United States. I'm convinced it's only now there's what's happening with the United States that people actually know about it. No one knew about its existence. There's people of a certain age, obviously, that would know something about the Cunard Queens, but no one here knew about United States.
How much or how well do people still remember, or how often do you sometimes see the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth show up in England? Because I know in Scotland they have a huge mural of the ship there. I think it's in Glasgow, and I know. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Like I say, but believe it or not, even though I've been to the UK, I've never actually been up to Scotland. I've only done most of England and some of Wales. I think I did Wales when I was little, but I've never actually made it up to Scotland or Northern Ireland. But at some point, I will do Northern Ireland. I will do. I'm half tempted to sail up on the Waverley at some point, maybe to Scotland. But what I was dying to mention, Shiloh, like I say, sorry to interrupt you, but I put a picture of the Queen Mary in a Facebook group, a few pictures actually, and just trying to advertise the ship. And someone commented and said, "Oh, my great grandfather designed the keys for the Queen Mary."
Yeah,
I thought, wow. you just don't know who's around with a connection to the ship. But it kind of saddens me now that, especially younger people, don't know about the ship. Everyone knows about Titanic, just about, but not many people really know that much about.
Which is kind of mind blowing to me because, I mean, it makes sense why Titanic is so well known, but just 30, 40 years ago, the Queen Mary the Queen Elizabeth too, was extremely famous all over the world, and especially England. She was all over advertisements in England. She was all over the radio. You would go to the bookstore and you would see the Queen Mary posters everywhere. It was everywhere. Everybody knew about the Queen Mary. And it's just so interesting and kind of crazy to me how quickly it ceased and how Titanic is the only known...
Yeah, I think as well, because the James Cameron film did so well, that's the only reason that Titanic's kind of etched in people's minds. And that's why
it would certainly help.
There's people that say, you look on Facebook posts and people that say, "Oh, I can't believe they scrapped Olympic." Well, I'm sorry, but Olympic wasn't that well known up until, like I say, the whole Titanic thing. It's easy to look with 2025 hindsight and been like, "Oh yes, it'd been nice to have had Olympic preserved," but then where would it have gone? Where would it have gone? Who would maintain it? What do you actually do with it? Because when Queen Mary was bought by Long Beach, people in England were saving old railway lines and railway locomotives from the scrapyards. So, like, the whole era of preserving these older machines was kind of still in its infancy back then in 1967.
Yeah. Yep.
When is the next time you visit Queen Mary?
Hopefully not too long, actually. My plan is at some point, it all depends on money, but if I can get enough overtime and that sorted and get a bit more in the bank, and then I might do San Fran later this year or possibly even next year. But what I might have to do is, because you need, from the UK, if you're visiting the US as a tourist, you need the ESTA. I was chatting to a friend about it, and I'm toying with the idea of maybe doing another state as well. I really want to see the Grand Canyon. In fact, this ties in perfectly well. As Shiloh said, he's amazed about as many people don't know about the Queen Mary. I was shocked how many Americans have not seen the Grand Canyon. I would assume like almost every American you talk to had seen the Grand Canyon. Do you know what I mean? Yep. It's like my family, because I will say I've got family nearby in Redondo Beach, which is 15 or so miles north of Long Beach, and they've not been to the they've not seen the Grand Canyon, although my aunt says she's seen it from a plane, but that's not actually seeing it up close.
Well, to be fair, it's not easy to get to the Grand Canyon.
It's not.
It's very, very long distance through deserts in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And, but I will say, when I've been to the Grand Canyon, so not to downplay it, but it's a very, very beautiful scenic area. But you get there and you get to the edge and you look over and you're like, wow.
It's just vast.
And then you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll
I've
get
done
back
it.
in the car.
That's sort of how
See, the thing is, though, I want to take the Grand Canyon off, but I've got this feeling that the Grand Canyon will just be, you've done it and that's that. Whereas the Queen Mary, yeah, I've done it, but I'd happily go back and have that experience again, because it just leaves a lasting impression on you.
You can't appreciate the Queen Mary in 100 trips as well as you could 1,000. You know what I mean? Like, you cannot say that, okay, I've been to the ship enough. I haven't got to a point so far. You know what I mean? I don't think I ever will get to a point where I tell myself that's enough.
Yeah, I mean, on this last visit, I was in California for 7 days, and 5 out of those 7 days I spent on the Queen Mary. And I honestly was afraid that maybe by like the 3rd or 4th day, I might be like, okay, this is enough Queen Mary.
It would
but
get
no,
scary.
I mean, I got to the 5th day and I was like, man, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was just like, I was lucky that I actually got a bonus day on the Queen Mary. But, but yeah, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alex, can I just touch upon, obviously, for me, this was as well the first time not just the first time on the Queen Mary, this was the first time in the US. So, like I said, it took until last year I finally decided, right, I need to get to California. And then, obviously, I've got family in Redondo Beach, which has helped no end, because I stayed with them for a few days. Went to the Queen Mary, had 3 days on the Queen Mary, and then back up to Redondo, and then the day after flew back to the UK. But it just didn't feel like, even though I was in the US for 10 days, it just didn't feel like I'd spent enough time in the US. But then again, I suppose I could spend 100 days in the US and still feel like I've not seen enough just to California.
Yeah.
There's just so much to do, and the problem with LA in general, it's just so spread out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You think, had I never picked up that book when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
I probably never have had like a proper excuse to maybe have gone to California. I'd never met you guys. I'd never have had the appreciation for old things that I do. Okay, me and my dad own old cars, but I'd never have had the appreciation for older stuff that I have. Just like with you guys, I feel Queen Mary, even though it's 5,000 miles away, changed my life.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there is a certain magic about the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And someone once told me the Queen Mary has a way of bringing the right people together. And so I believe it, now I believe it completely because, like I said, the ship has changed my life in ways that I couldn't even imagine 5 years ago. And I'm still meeting amazing people. I mean, after hanging out with you for 1 day, Brad, I was like, I can tell this guy's going to be part of the group. I can just tell. I was like, I can't. I have to like keep in contact with him. So yeah, because I was telling Shiloh and Chris, I'm like, he's a cool guy. You got to meet Brad.
Yeah, and I was excited to come down there and finally meet him. Yeah.
And it's just amazing. It's weird. Like I was watching your videos, and I watched loads of them. Not just the Queen Mary ones, but I've watched. I remember watching the New Orleans ones, especially the steamship one you went on, Alex. What was the name of the steamship in
Natchez?
It was
in New Orleans.
the Natchez.
The Natchez. And I've watched a lot of your Disneyland content, and even one about a bridge in this crazy bridge in Oregon. And it's like your main focus is the Queen Mary, but I like how you do a lot of other stuff as well. Your Queen Mary is like your bread and butter, if you know what I mean. You do a lot of other interesting stuff as well. It's like, as I've said, I really want to go to San Francisco, and I bought this book a while back, and I literally said to you, if I knew, there's a lamp just come on. Oh well. If I knew that I'd meet you, Alex, I'd never have bothered to buy that book. Seriously, you know so much about San Francisco. It just blows my mind. It's like, because I'm like, I want to do this, I want to do that. There's a lot I want to do. Like, I want to do Yosemite, but I do feel like I want to do it because it looks beautiful, but I feel like you probably can't do enough in a day.
No,
not in a day.
I kind of feel like I would do Yosemite and think, wow, this place is amazing, but be kind of like a one-shot deal. I'd do it and that'd be it. Whereas the Queen Mary and even Anaheim as well, I'd happily go back. That's the point as well. Anaheim was very good as well. Just like the Queen Mary, I'd be back at Anaheim.
Yeah.
And as well, it'd be kind of cool to know just a bit more about Long Beach. And I mean, other than Queen Mary, there's not an awful lot of attractions. There's obviously you can get the fast cat, is it called that, to Catalina, and you can also go to the museum. Sorry, what am I talking about? Not museum, the Aquarium of the Pacific, and
Oh yeah.
but really, there's not a great deal in Long Beach, and even my family said, "Oh, it's good they've got the Queen Mary because Long Beach I couldn't comment on this, but according to my aunt, Long Beach isn't as prosperous as like the likes of Redondo, Hermosa, and Anaheim."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, the Queen Mary is what built Long Beach, essentially. Long Beach was a sleepy little seaside community when the Queen Mary came in 1967, and the ship literally, with its popularity, had built the city up to what it is today. I mean, I think that's funny because a lot of people in Long Beach who are against the Queen Mary don't quite realize that. They're like, oh, you know, we don't need this ship. And it's like, you have no idea how much you need this ship.
Yeah,
exactly.
It gets, 2.5 to 3 million visitors per year, which, by the way, is more visitors per year than the Queen Mary ever saw in her 31 years at sea.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's a major tourist attraction for Long Beach, and she's only getting more popular.
The city considers her their crown jewel.
We should only keep advertising the ship. I just wish the California Tourist Board or whoever just advertise that ship, the ship just a bit better, and focus not so much on the hauntings, but on the rich history the ship has.
Yes.
To get more tourists in. I feel the haunted aspect kind of overshadows what the ship's really about.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And as well, I wish people would get it out of their mind about the whole thing about the ship sailing again. It's too valuable to risk losing.
Yeah. Alex, you're talking about this. You were talking about this earlier, and I really do agree with this. And they need to put advertisements on television again.
Yeah.
They do, yeah. They do.
I only remember seeing one. That was years ago. I only ever saw one. But
yeah,
there's still a lot of people that watch TV and or even YouTube ads. I don't see any Queen Mary YouTube ads. They can run some YouTube ads. They can run some television ads. And I think it'll really.
They could invite like influencers who are like really into like history and
you have no idea. You have no idea how many there are in Los Angeles.
Do you know?
Yeah,
I was just thinking about this. Do you know who would be an absolute? He's been to California a few times just lately. James May would be the ideal person. Hammonds, Clarkson, May, obviously Top Gear Grand Tour. James May. He's interested in like steam locomotives and old motorcycles and old cars and all that.
Yeah, I think he's even interested in like World War II history as well. I knew he had an interest in the Spitfires, so that would be really cool for him to see the Queen Mary.
Can we reach out to James May?
Yeah, that would be.
Go ahead and do that.
Let's get James May to Long Beach.
Let's get him on the podcast.
If James May were to go to the Queen Mary, the popularity would explode.
Well, it's time for us to move on to the next
to the trivia
part of the podcast, which is our Q&A. So we've got 3 questions to answer today. Let's see. Our first question is from MindTwine45, and they ask, is it true that despite Queen Mary currently having 2 horns, that only one is sounded daily? And the answer to that is true. So the Queen Mary, as you know, originally had 3 Typhon whistles. One of them is on the Queen Mary 2 currently, and then the last 2 are still on the ship on the forward funnel. And on a daily basis, they do sound one of them, but not both of them. The second one is honestly probably in need of a restoration. They maintain the first one because it's used every day, but the second one definitely needs a restoration. They don't use it because, I mean, technically it's not really necessary. It would just be kind of a luxury to have both of them operating at the same time. But yeah, they only use one of them. So if both of them were used, I mean, I think you can imagine it would sound a bit interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
Imagine that Cinco de Mayo day if they'd have both of them blowing at the same time. I think everyone would just jump up to the sky, wouldn't they?
Oh yeah.
That would be. And me and Alex, we were just laughing at everyone's reaction when that horn blew.
Yeah, it did. Our second question is from SMGH027. Why is the anchor well on Queen Mary different than Titanic? And at first I had no idea what they were talking about, but I looked at it very carefully, and indeed Titanic's anchor well is just a little circle on the bow of the ship where the anchor goes up into. On Queen Mary, it's like a large, almost square cutout on the bow of the ship. And as far as I can tell, it really has more to do with the fact that Queen Mary's anchors were much larger than Titanic's in terms of, well, I guess in terms of dimensional size, but also in weight. I believe Titanic's anchors, well, I don't want to take a guess. I know they were smaller. They weighed less than Queen Mary's, because Queen Mary's were the largest anchors in the world at the time.
Yep.
And so I imagine that, you see, when you look at the cutout of the anchor well for Queen Mary, it's extra thick steel. I think the steel sheets in that cutout are 2 inches thick, and even then they're doubled up or even quadrupled up. And so it's so that way when they pull the anchor up, the anchor doesn't dent the ship or anything like that. I'm sure they probably had issues like that with Olympic and with probably briefly with Britannic, just not having any kind of protection of the hull when the anchor came up. So but that's essentially why. It's just for Queen Mary, it's just extra dense hull plates, so that way it's protected.
And that design on Titanic and Olympic and Britannic, that was kind of a similar to the Clipper stern. That was kind of a classic design that had been used on ships previous. Yep.
But our last question is from Dino DeSantis, and he asks, did Cunard return to any original Queen Mary / Queen Elizabeth designs or suppliers for the QE2 and the Queen Mary 2? Now, there's only one thing that right off the top of my head comes to mind is but I don't know of any other companies that Cunard went back to, or even supplies that they went back to for QE2 and Queen Mary 2.
I don't know either. I mean, maybe the suppliers for their signal flags and their ensigns and the house flags. Maybe that too. But yeah, the only thing I was gonna think of too is Foley.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
and
the
it doesn't really count, but I mean, technically they did use pieces from Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth that they inherited. So I don't know if that really counts as they went back to the companies that produced them, but they did pull those original pieces and put them on the ship. So in a way, I guess that counts.
All right, folks, now we're going to move on to our trivia game. And so with this game, usually I'll ask 2 questions, and then Shiloh will ask 2 questions. We usually kind of pair off and do, I do one, he does one, I do one, he does one. And we'll even see if Brad can answer these questions too. And then we have one last question just for the audience that'll get answered later. But for my first trivia question for you guys, let me just make sure. Okay, yeah. What was the primary purpose of Queen Mary's cruiser stern?
The
So what you want?
primary purpose of Queen Mary's cruiser stern, I would say definitely not to do with fuel efficiency, because as we know, the Queen Mary wasn't that fuel efficient. So when they were designing the Elizabeth, they more or less made a lot of different alterations to it, because it didn't have the what do you call it? It didn't have the cutaway on the bow, the well deck. That was it. And the essentially, if you look at the Elizabeth, it was designed to be an improvement of the Mary. So I guess I'm going to say it was just to make it look kind of cool.
Well, my answer is okay. So with the cruiser stern, especially on Queen Mary, the screws are underneath the ship still. Because when you look at Titanic, the screws are at the very end of the ship, where the ship ends, or the hull ends. The screws are there. But when you have the props on the Queen Mary's cruiser stern, the Queen Elizabeth as well, they're underneath the ship still, and that causes positive. How do you put it? It promotes pretty much the ship gliding on the water as if she were on ice compared to the clipper stern.
Yeah, I think Shiloh, you pretty much got it, but the way you said it was just kind of it's hard to say completely. I think I know what you mean.
Right.
But yeah, so the answer to that question is that the cruiser stern, its primary purpose was to create buoyancy to reduce drag on the hull. And
right.
Which is like you were saying with Titanic, the screws were all the way at the very end of the waterline of the hull. And so when ships like Titanic, for instance, would get going, there was certain hydrodynamic forces that caused the stern of those ships to kind of sink down a little bit into the water, which raised the waterline towards the stern of the ship as the ship started moving, which created more drag and actually slowed down a ship. And so to kind of prevent that, cruiser sterns were invented by the military. I believe it was the British Navy that invented them.
Yeah.
To create buoyancy, because the cruiser stern kind of hangs over the propellers. It's in the water, but it adds buoyancy to the stern of the ship, and what that does is it prevents the ship from sinking so far into the water as it gets going, and therefore reducing drag along the hull and making it more efficient. So actually, in a way, Brad was also a little bit right. It did make the Queen Mary more efficient, and it did save her some fuel costs. Probably not much, but it did save her some fuel costs. And so it's one of those things where, like, people always tell me, oh, the Normandy had such an efficient hull, and Queen Mary did not have an efficient hull. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, Normandy had a bulbous bow, which made the bow of her hull more efficient. But Queen Mary had a cruiser stern, which made the stern of her hull more efficient. So it's the same thing.
And the Normandy had a fantail, which is pretty much a clipper stern.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it didn't provide that same kind of stern buoyancy during movement that a cruiser stern does. So, Shiloh, what is your first question?
Mine are kind of more directed to Brad, but you can answer them too if you want.
Oh, I see how it is.
So my first question is, who was the first child that went down the slide in the first class nursery?
In the first class nursery? Well, it was our late Queen, Elizabeth II, and her younger sister, Princess Margaret.
Yep.
That is correct.
And they were the... Alex was showing me the recreation of the nursery, and wasn't the slides called the Elizabeth slides? Because, like I say, they were the first kids. I think the day before the ship set sail on its maiden voyage, they were allowed to play in that room, just as kids, and they kind of christened the room. So that's really kind of cool. Obviously, it's not so long ago. It'd be 3 years in September since we lost the Queen. But I don't really remember Princess Margaret because she died 20 odd years ago. Yeah. So I'd only been a little kid, so I don't remember the death of Margaret. But obviously, losing the Queen was such a recent thing.
Yeah, they had christened the slide the Royal Slide.
Yes.
But yeah, Cunard was very proud that Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret were the first to try it out. So
I knew I was right. I knew I was right along that line. I didn't really. I got in my head it was the Elizabeth slide. I didn't think it was the Royal Slide. But yeah, I know for a fact that, like you say, they christened it technically, which is kind of cool.
When I had that thought as a question, I was starting to think too, is when the workers actually built that slide, I'm sure at least one of them slid down it themselves to test.
Test it, yeah.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, we don't talk about them, but I'm sure it happened.
We'll never probably,
but either way, they were the first children on the slide. So
yes, the first intended
demographic for the slide.
Users.
Yeah.
So my next question for the both of you is, what major flaw plagues the QE2 to this day? And it's a multi-part question, or multi-choice question. What major flaw plagues the QE2 to this day? Is it A, an aluminum structure, B, exploding boilers, or C, the welded steel hull?
I'm going to say the aluminium, or as you Americans say, the aluminum structure. Because I was watching a documentary about the construction of the Queen Mary 2, and it was saying about the problems with the QE2 when it was in service. Because it was 2004 they launched the Queen Mary 2, and it was the QE2 sailed till 2008 or 9. Yeah, I'm gonna say the aluminum just purely on that, because the thing is though, I know for a fact that in the QE2 went into service pretty much as the Mary and the original Queen Elizabeth were going out, and it started as a steamer. Then in about 1985, 86, mid-80s anyway, it was converted to a diesel powertrain. So that's not likely to affect it today. So purely on that evidence, I'm going to say the aluminium issue.
Would you concur, Shiloh?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was thinking the aluminium. I'm gonna say it the British way. The aluminium structure.
Well, the correct way is the American way, but no, I'm
Okay.
just
Okay.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
You started a debate there with British people.
Yes, it is the aluminium structure. So
you said it too.
Well, I did because well, you know what? I think it's fun to say things the British way occasionally. Just
Well, I mean,
sometimes I say favorite.
Yeah,
with a U.
it's just
It sounds the same though.
It is.
That's
I
the
know.
joke.
it's
You have
just
to
a
pronounce
different
that
way
U.
of doing or saying things. Like obviously we say things different to how you guys would say it, and some people get angry. At the end of the day, I just think, oh well, it's just how we were told to say it and how
Yeah.
you guys. So
Well, you might have noticed
right or
that
wrong.
when I talk about Queen Mary's elevators, I call them lifts.
Lifts.
I do.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, because even though I'm American, normally I'd call an elevator an elevator. The Queen Mary is British, so I call her elevators lifts. So, yeah, it's just a little. I don't know if anybody on the channel noticed that.
It don't matter.
Well,
It
no.
is. The thing is, though, you think, oh, the Queen Mary is British as a Sunday dinner or a British pub. I think it's just as much of an American ship as it is a British ship.
Oh,
So
yes,
again,
yes.
I probably should have mentioned that when you asked me the question about how do you feel about California having a ship. I
Oh.
think it's just as much an American ship as it is a British ship.
That's funny because that's exactly what I say word for word every time somebody brings up the fact of when they show a picture of the SS United States and they show a picture of the Queen Mary and they say this is how America treated a British ship as opposed to their own ship. And first of all, it wasn't America that saved the Queen Mary; it was
No.
Long Beach. But second of
Yeah.
all, what you just said is exactly what I say. Is she's just as much as an American ship as she is British.
Yes, exactly. And it just angers me that people don't get that. I mean, yes, I kind of wish something good would happen to the United States, but you take on board what Alex says, and I just have to agree. Who would come up with the hundreds of millions of dollars to make it an attraction? I'm not going to go into detail, but yeah, I do think the United States argument it could just run and run, but personally, there's only a couple of ways I would see for the SS United States, but it would involve large sums of money.
Yep.
So to quickly explain the aluminum structure on QE2, because someone had asked me, the reason why I asked this question on for the trivia was because someone the other day had said, oh, you know, they should put the QE2 back into service. And so I was telling them that one of the biggest reasons why they just cannot do that is because the QE2 has an aluminum or aluminium structure, and that structure within the hull is. They discovered soon after the QE2 went into service that aluminum, it has a much higher, a much lower threshold for what's the terminology called? When the metal flexes, its ability to retain its shape and its strength can be reduced every time it's flexed.
Yeah.
Now steel has a much higher threshold for that, so it can stand being flexed multiple times for years and still be fine. Aluminum can't. If you have ever had like a piece of aluminum in your hand and you've ever bent it, you bend it enough times and it'll snap and it'll come apart. And the QE2 has an aluminum structure, and they just didn't know that at the time about again, I can't remember the terminology for it, but it just has a much lower threshold for that. And in fact, there are already cracks in the aluminum structure of the QE2. She's fine being perfectly still in water, but if she was put out to sea, it would probably be a danger in the future. Shiloh, what is your second question?
I mentioned these earlier, but the reason I picked this as a question is because a lot of people find this interesting when they see these for the first time, because they're kind of a unique thing, not only just to the Queen Mary and ships, but just in general. So Brad, when you went into your cabin for the first time and you saw those little circular air vents, do you know what the official name for those are?
I'm trying to think, I know it sounds stupid, but I'm actually trying to think what you mean on this one, Shiloh.
So they're made out of bakelite, so they're on the wall, and they probably would have been above your bed or next to your bed.
Oh, I think I know what you mean now.
Mhm.
Do you know what? I literally just call them vents.
Vents?
And just leave it at that.
Would it help if we gave you a hint that the name of those vents is French?
Mm-hmm.
French. Still doesn't really give me that much of a hint, to be fair, guys. No. Sorry.
It's kind of a difficult name to remember anyway.
It is. It's a
I
very
will answer.
It's a very unique name too.
Am I going to feel really stupid after this? Because like with your brain, you're trying to think, and like it's like, come on, brain, please work. But yeah, I can't solve the stuff perfectly well.
So those circular vents are called punkalouvers.
To be fair, though, that's not really something I've really heard of before.
No, yeah,
that's not really something someone would just out the blue be like, "Oh, that's a punkalouver."
Yep. I was gonna say they're very unique. Yeah.
Louver's obviously a French word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The reason I chose as a question is because there's just every time people see them for the first time, they're wondering what is that. And it's just such a unique thing because they're actually still in use today, but they're in, I'm not talking just on the ship, I mean just in everyday life. They're in warehouses, they're in scaffolding in stores. You just never see them because they're hidden by the ceiling tiles. But they still exist, they're still being made today. But they're just such a unique piece of technology.
They're also used in airplane cabins.
Yes.
So you can adjust your air.
Yep. And also those large, I think they're in...
when you sat on a plane and there's a little knob and you get a nice stream of fresh air. Do you know what? Every time I go on an aeroplane, before the plane takes off, I love just turning them on, just have the nice stream of air, just pointing at you. Because I find aeroplanes, although I don't mind being on planes, I just find aeroplanes a bit stuffy.
Yeah,
especially the flight I went on to get to California. That's the longest flight I'd ever done in my life. Because previously, I've been to countries like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, France, Germany. So they're all 2-3 hour flights, really. Yeah. And you think 2-3 hour flight from the UK, you're in another country. 2-3 hour flight from California, you're probably in Utah or New Mexico.
Yeah.
You're still in the United States.
Yeah.
All right. And the last question I have is for the audience, and the answer will be posted a couple hours after this video goes public. It'll be put in the comment section of the video. So, for the audience, true or false? Queen Elizabeth's interior promenade deck rooms had an equal ceiling height all across. True or false? Queen Elizabeth's interior promenade deck rooms had an equal ceiling height. Anyway, folks, you will get the answer to that a couple hours after the video posts. I just want to say also that be sure to check out our merchandise shop, which the link is in the description below, as well as the fact that we have RMS QM Wiki, which is our online free encyclopedia for everything Queen Mary. And it's always being expanded, always being added to. It's a source of great information if you love deep dives into the history and the engineering and the design of Queen Mary. And follow us on Facebook as well. Link again in the description below for our Facebook page, RMS QM Wiki. Thank you so much, Brad, for joining us on this episode. It's been really interesting to hear your perspective on the Queen Mary, especially being there for the first time, and especially hearing, kind of your thoughts about the Queen Mary being in California and all that. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's crazy. It's something I never I never thought I'd be doing this. I've seen so many of your videos, but I never thought I'd be in one. It's crazy.
He's
But then
starstruck.
life's
What's even
just full
crazier
of
too?
unexpected surprises.
Yes, you're featured in our very first short film too. You're an extra.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I was in
You're an extra in
Alone
our
at
short
Sea.
film.
Yep.
Our
Yeah.
short film, everybody, is called Alone at Sea. It was posted weeks ago, so be sure to check it out. It's already on the channel for you guys to see. We put a lot of heart and soul into that. But anyway, folks, that does it for this podcast today. I don't know what happened to my voice right there, but we will see you all next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
bye. Bye.